Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Genesis, the 15th chapter. And as we went through in the 14th chapter, the war between the kings of the east, led by Kedar Laomer, and the kings of those that were in the land of Canaan, right? The kings of Sodom and Zoar and those cities, in which Abram ends up having to join in that war to deliver Lot, his nephew. So this is Genesis 15:1. After these things, the word of the Lord Yahweh came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. And in other words, the Lord would protect guard, protect, take care of Abram, and also reward him greatly. And Abram said, Lord Yahweh, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus. Because remember, the Lord had told Abram that he would bless him and his seed and so on. And Abram is saying, well, I don't have a child. I don't even have a son or anything. And the steward, i.e., the steward of his house, the heir of his possessions, is this servant, right? Eliezer. And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, so I don't have any children. And lo, one born in mine house is mine heir, which is a servant. The one born in his house being a servant of his. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. So no, it's not going to be a servant in your house that's going to be the heir to you, for you to pass on your blessings and your inheritance to. But it's going to be one from your own loins, from your own seed. And he brought him forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven and tell the stars. So look up and see if you can count the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. So, this was the Lord was telling this to Abram, right? But this was something that was requiring faith, because Abram is very old at this point, right? And he's like, in his mind, he's thinking, but you keep telling me about my seed, and it's going to be so much and so vast. You're telling me that that my seed is going to be as innumerable as the stars of heaven. I don't even have a seed, and my wife is old, really at this point, past the stage of bearing children. All right, or very soon to be. But Abram had faith, and he believed what the Lord said. Verse 6, and he believed in the Lord Yahweh, and he counted it to him for righteousness. So because Abram believed the Lord and he had faith to the Lord counted that faith towards to him as righteousness. And he said unto him, I am the Lord Yahweh that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. So that's the reason why I took you from where you were born and so on, and brought you here. And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? So, what's like a sign or a token? Because that was a practice, a common practice in the ancient world. There was something. In fact, even with Noah, right? The Lord said, hey, this is a token of this covenant, which would be the rainbow. And whenever you see that, it would be a sign. Like when you sign a contract, that signature is a token that you have agreed, right? And the proof of the deal or the covenant between you and the other party. So Abram was asking, in this case, since it's common practice, you're telling me this, but like, what am I gonna, like, where am I gonna, what's the proof of this? And he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds divided he not. So remember, the Lord came to Abram in a vision and told him these things. And practically speaking, this is after he woke up. He went and did these things, right? So he takes these different animals, and as it says, he divided them in the midst. So he cut them in half and laid each piece one against another, so side by side. But the birds he didn't divide. And what he was doing here was, this was a part of a ritual of an oath. Okay, like yeah, it was a part of ritual of an oath, which the Lord ends up completing later on as we go through the chapter. But this oath, which also we see in the time of Jeremiah, was you would cut the animals in half, you would place them there, and you and the other party would walk through the midst of them. And what this would signify is like a self-binding oath slash curse upon you if you did not obey or adhere or keep up your end of the bargain or of the deal. So it was kind of like saying, let what has happened to these animals come upon me. These animals that were cut in half and killed, let that happen to me if I don't follow my end of this oath. So he ends up, doing this, cutting them, putting them there. And when the fowls came down upon the carcass, Abram drove them away, because that's meat. So they eventually they'll try to come and eat it, but he kept them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. So as the sun was setting, the Lord put the spirit of slumber or sleep upon Abram, and he fell asleep. And this great horror of darkness was a vision that he received. And in the vision, as it says, the Lord told him, the Lord said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. And this is referring to the descendants of Abraham or Abram. And this was the time period of them being in Egypt, okay, being strangers in a land that is not theirs, i.e. in the land of Egypt. And they shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Once again, this was the period of the Israelites serving captivity in the land of Egypt. And also that nation whom they shall serve, the Egyptians, will I judge. And the Lord did so. When we get to the book of Exodus, you'll see that. And, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And is that not what happened on the night of the Passover, when it says that they spoiled the Egyptians, right, as they left? So the Egyptians were quick to have them leave and gave them, whatever it is that they asked of. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, meaning Abraham would die in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again. Now, this fourth generation is the fourth generation in Egypt, not from Abraham or not from Abram. Okay, so when you go with because you had Abram or Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob, and then he had his sons, and they eventually went into Egypt. So if you take a look, let's say even from the counting from the tribe of Levi, starting with Levi, you had Levi of the first generation, you had Kohath, I believe was one of his sons, and then Amram, and then Moses. Okay, and it was during the time of Moses that the Lord actually, brought Israel up out of Egypt to the land of Canaan, right? So it's the four generations. There would be four generations in Egypt, and that's when the Lord would bring them forth from there. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full, and that's why the Lord set that specific time, because there was a measure by which he was measuring the Amorites, which were dwelling in the land, to justify giving the land to Israel, right? the Lord would have the situation play out in the sense that the judgment he would bring on the Amorites for their sins in the land would be would coincide with the Lord bringing Israel to come and slay them and kick them out of the land. So it's just like how in Revelation, the 18th chapter, it mentions that her sins have reached onto heaven. So there's a measure of iniquity that the Lord has for each people or empire. And once they hit that, that's it. The judgment is now going to come down upon them. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that that passed between those pieces. So the Lord had a smoking furnace is like when you look into it, it's like a fire pot, and this lamp is like either like a ball of fire or like a torch that went between those pieces, and that was like the Lord walking between them to complete or partake in the covenantal ritual with him and Abraham to solidify the covenant that he had made with him, in telling him that he would make his seed innumerable and so on and so forth. In the same day, the Lord Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, and from the river of Egypt onto the great river, which is the river Euphrates, the Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaims and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites, meaning the place that later on came to be inhabited by these different families of people, is the regions from that great river Egypt, or from the river of Egypt onto the Euphrates. So it's like a modern day equivalent would be if the Lord was saying from the East Coast to the West Coast, from New York to Texas to Colorado to South Carolina to Nevada to California, right? And he's listing basically the regions between the East and the West Coast. And that brings us to the end of the book of Genesis, the 15th chapter. Lord willing, thou is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.